I expect a good season for the Vols. And if there are surprises in a positive manner, that could be kind of what projects in to be able to do something special.
Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, we're going to be listening to Cole Cubelic break down our Volunteers. He had a video that came out a few days ago called his Tennessee post-spring review, something like that. In the earlier part of the video, he's also talking about coaches and NIL. So if you would like to check out the full video, then I will leave a link in the description below to the video. And for those of you who don't know who Cole Cubelic is, he played center for the Auburn Tigers. You know, he's played offensive line for a long time, and he is now an SEC analyst, so does a lot of stuff with the SEC network, whether it's in-game coverage. I believe he also has a show on the SEC network, and he just does a phenomenal job. So it's very valuable to me to listen to what, you know, these experts and other analysts have to say, especially about our Volunteers. And y'all are going to see, especially for those of y'all that are members of this channel, a lot of what he's saying are things that we identified watching Tennessee's orange and white game. So should be a fun one. I'm just going to be reacting to what he has to say about our team. I think he does a phenomenal job, especially being that he has to cover so many different teams, and it's not just Tennessee. Very impressive work by him, but we're going to jump into the video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel.
I thought Nico was a little off in this game. His protection wasn't great. And then we mentioned it, a couple of offensive linemen out, you're moving guys around, you're rotating. It's to be expected. But I thought the backs were poor in protection. And not that, again, spring game's not end all be all, but you just don't want to see guys taking wrong steps, going wrong direction, turning blitzers free. And there was some simple stuff, some three-man games, some twists that just weren't picked up. When they slide the protection, you get a twist. Sometimes the back's going to have to be the one that switches off, and just they didn't see things the way that they needed to. Now, that could also be on the quarterback. I don't think it was. I'm not saying it was, but some of it could have been. And that's going to have to be cleaned up because, yes, this offensive line has to protect him, but he has to protect himself. And that's not just when he decides to scramble or he has a design run. It's by getting into the right protections against the right looks and having an understanding how to do that.
All right, so before he gets into gas some more, let me just touch on what he said to start this whole video off. Number one was Nico. He says that he looked a little bit off. A big part of the reason he is off is because, like he said, the offensive line was kind of patchwork. A lot of our guys weren't out there, and then we're very, very basic in this orange and white game. It's just no need to show too much to the entire world to scout our team. So I think that that's part of it. But in the situations where Nico did have time, you know, we can see that he is doing a really good job of controlling the offense. Now on to the running backs and pass protection. I've told y'all for a long time, been concerned about it, and I'm still concerned about it because, yes, you know, we did have Dylan Sampson out. We also had Cam Seldon out. But Dylan Sampson has not looked the best in pass protection either. So not quite sure if that is more of the young guys playing and maybe a lack of willingness is what I saw sometimes, especially from a guy like Bishop. Looked a little bit unwilling to get into the physicality of the game, maybe because he's a little bit smaller. I think that Khalifa Keith looked just fine in pass protection, but is this an issue with the way that our scheme is set up? That's going to be very interesting heading into the rest of the all season. That has got to get addressed and it's got to get fixed. But let's listen to what he has to say about Gaston Moore.
Moore, I thought, showed pretty good command of the offense, pushed the ball downfield well. Like, is it a step back? Yes, it would be. But I think he at least showed you he can operate the offense at a fairly high level. You know, Merklinger, I thought, showed you a strong arm, good wheels, moved around fairly well. So somebody who maybe with extra development might be able to help down the road. I felt pretty good about him. At running back, it's hard to tell because we know Dylan Sampson's the guy. We know what he's capable of.
All right, so he's getting into the running backs some more. But just to kind of recap what he said about the quarterbacks, a lot of people have been asking as Tennessee Vol fans, well, we don't have a great backup quarterback. What are we going to do? You don't really, like, you're not expecting to have a great backup quarterback. Once you have to use your backup quarterback in a, you know, a count situation, then your season is probably over with at that point. Not very many teams. I mean, I could think of maybe like the Buckeyes, Oregon, Texas. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, you could maybe throw Georgia in there, but not really because it's not any proven talent behind Carson Beck. It just is not very many teams. Alabama doesn't have a good backup quarterback. It's not to be expected. So with Gaston, we do have a player that can run the offense at a high level. And it's good to hear Cole coming on here, you know, kind of as an outsider. He's an SEC guy, but he's outside of, you know, our program, out of, you know, outside of our school, saying the same things. That, man, it does look like Gaston Moore can kind of run the offense on more of a game manager level if he needs to. He also said some good things about Merck. I think that Jake Merklinger is going to be a great player once he gets that opportunity. But let's hear what he has to say about our running back room.
Understanding is that he's put on a lot of really good weight this offseason, and that physically he may even be a little different than he was last year. You were without your number 2, Cam Selden, who, a lot of guys we're going to talk about have been or are dinged up. That could potentially be a problem for this football team. Like, depth is a concern, but guys who have already been dinged up that they're going to lean on could also be a little bit of an issue. Decent Bishop had an ankle during spring a little bit, but he had a long run. I thought he showed good explosiveness. I want to see him break more tackles too. The backs that were in the game, I thought there were a couple of opportunities for them to pick up a few extra yards, and it just didn't happen. But I think that when you talk about Khalifa Keith and a couple of these other backs that are going to be there, that room's not going to be a problem either way. Now, the top end of it, I think, could sort of help Tennessee get over the hump and be a little bit better, maybe be a playoff team, as we'll say with a couple of these positions. But it's one that a lot of it is going to be by design, and a lot of it is going to be based on what else is working well and what else is kind of on the extra tier of when this offense gets going as to how great or good they're going to be able to be. I thought the tight end group.
All right, so he's about to transition into the tight ends, but let's talk about the running backs, because I agree with a lot of what he said. Whenever we're breaking down the film of our orange and white game, we did kind of talk about the running backs maybe leaving a little bit of meat on the bone as far as being able to get more yards on some plays. And I don't know if that is necessarily because the coaching staff said, hey, listen, get what's there. We kind of know who y'all are. We don't need you to come out here trying to play hero ball because we're kind of getting shorthanded. We don't want to lose nobody else. That could be part of it. I don't know that they would have done it. I don't think I've ever heard a coach, really do something like that. But maybe because it is spring, that's very, very possible. I mean, who knows? So I did notice that. And then just him talking about, the way that we set things up, right? That's basically what he's saying. The higher end of our running back room and how far this team can go with our running backs is all going to be predicated off of the way that this offense is clicking in some other areas. Because of our scheme, the running back position is not one where we need to have, like some world beater back there. We just don't necessarily need it. We just need guys who can keep this offense moving the way that we need it to move. So 5, 6, 7 yards a clip. If y'all can do that, then we're going to be fine. Also, like we talked about earlier, have got to do a really good job blocking. So it does sound like Cole is saying the same things that we've been saying, seeing a lot of the same things that we've seen. We will continue to hear as we go through this, because he kind of touched on Cam Selden. Because he doesn't know our program as well as we do, he's going to maybe not give as much credit to some rooms as he could. Talking about a guy like Cam Selden, once he comes back, that room gets tremendous, because he's talking about Dylan Sampson being the guy, which he is going to be the guy. But for those of us that really understand what's going on, Cam Selden probably has a lot more upside than Dylan Sampson. And that's not to take anything away from Dylan Sampson. It's to give a little bit more to Cam Selden. And I could say the same thing about Peyton Lewis. He does kind of touch on, hey, some of this stuff is going to be unproven, so we don't really know what to expect. But yeah, I mean, Peyton Lewis, just from watching his film and hearing what everyone's been saying about him on the inside, he should be another one that would add a big time spark to this room. So a lot to be hopeful about so far from what Cole is saying.
It was impressive. Miles Kitzelman comes in from Alabama, had a couple grabs. He caught a slant, worked the middle of the field. I think he had an out route one time, but showed good hands, showed real physicality. He was very physical in spring ball. A guy that is a worker, a grinder, really gets pissed off when he doesn't do things right or misses an assignment, which he doesn't do a ton of, but somebody who I think understands, hey, this is how it needs to be done. And that in and of itself, I think could be great for this football team. Just having a little bit more of that kind of attitude, that kind of demeanor, a little bit more of the prick. I don't know a nice way to say it. Some Trey Smith, some Derek Barnett, some Al Wilson, that kind of stuff in that locker room. And I think he'll bring a little bit of that.
So we got to stop it again, because what he just said about Miles Kitzelman, we also said about Miles Kitzelman, just in watching his film, you can tell that he is one of those tougher guys. You feel like he's going to bring that winning mentality, that dog mentality to the locker room. Not that we don't already have it, but I do feel like there needs to be a little bit more of an edge to this team. I kind of felt that way for the past couple of years, right? Going down to Athens, or, the way that we've lost to Georgia, the way that we've lost pretty much any game, Florida, all that. We need to have some more presence inside of the locker room with some guys that are just straight up, look, it doesn't matter. We're going to be dogs and we're going to get this thing done. We said the same thing about Lance Hurd. So again, man, the staff is doing a great job of going out and identifying talent on several different levels, not just on the field, but also off the field inside that locker room. Excited to hear that. Miles Kitzelman also, hearing how Cole loves how physical he is. With Coach Abe, all of our tight ends are going to be great at blocking. Saw that last season. And I think that our scheme actually helps our tight ends be able to get some really good blocks. Like they get some kill shots set up. It's just set up that way from the scheme. So expect for all of our tight ends to be really good blockers because Coach Abe is a former offensive line coach. He's going to do a great job at coaching to those points. So we'll let him continue.
He's not a super dynamic player, but you got to have those guys in there. They hold people accountable and literally just show them how to work on a daily basis. I think he can do that. Also feel like, Charlie Browder did a couple of nice things. This is a big, long kid. He caught a couple of quick balls. I think his size is something that they might be able to take advantage of. Holden Stays, the Notre Dame tight end, I think is going to be.
I want to stop and say something real quick here about Charlie Browder because P and I talked a lot about him after the orange and white game. He looks really good. Keep in mind that he is, I believe, still a walk-on. I don't know if he's on scholarship at this point, but that just goes to show whenever you have people from outside of the program identifying talent of guys that aren't even scholarship players and saying, man, they look good. And he's pretty much talking about him like he should be one of our guys. That speaks volumes to the coaching and to the culture of our volunteers. So a lot to be excited about there as well.
Be a little bit more well-rounded, but a guy that with his hand in the dirt is going to be able to help him next to an offensive tackle and be able to do a lot of different things well. Ethan Davis is the one that I think you sort of highlight a little bit and you say, if or maybe this is the one that could be different. Athletic freak show, basketball background, just physically can do some things that most tight ends are not capable of doing. Now, that doesn't mean he's ready to be a 30, 35 snap a game contributor right now, but he could continue to work his way into being somebody who really helps this offense. I believe that.
So with him talking about Ethan Davis, everything that we've said before, but I do have to disagree with him on the point of him not being a, 35 snap a game guy. He's saying that because he's going more off of just his research and not actually watching him play that much, or, more of what he's heard from maybe some of the coaches or some, people close to the program and not really watching him play because Ethan Davis did not participate in the orange and white game. We said, hey, he should sit out because he got hurt in the game last year and he has been injury prone. But he can most definitely do it all. I would say that as far as the ceiling goes, he's got the highest ceiling inside of that room. And he's already touched on 3 guys, including Holden Stays, well, really 4 because of Browder, that look like they can play ball. And I just want to say this really quickly because we'll touch on this in one of the later videos, but I think that Tennessee can get into a different sort of a, traditional almost goal line formation with 3 tight ends and just create some very serious problems because we can start off bunched and we can spread you out down there. Or, we can start off spread out and then bunch you up because our tight ends are pretty much all like wide receivers, especially because we have a quarterback that can run and we've got 3, 4, 5 running backs that can all go. So this team, as far as what he's saying right now, as far as what we know, right, like taking what he's saying and then what we know along with it, the team sounds really good, especially on offense, but we'll let him finish.
I think he's a guy that's going to help this offense. From an offensive line perspective, and like I said, the tight end room, I think is strong. I think it's deeper than it's been, and it's been pretty good the last 2 years. But I think it's more athletic than it's been, and I think it's deeper than it's been, and it has a higher ceiling than it's had. And you got some vets in there now that can kind of show guys the way. The offensive line has a chance to be really good. LSU is going to be the best group entering the season. Georgia will have a chance, but this group shouldn't be too far behind any of those. And they're going to have to stay healthy. They just are.
All right, so y'all just heard it here. Somebody from outside of this channel, somebody that's not a Tennessee fan, telling y'all that this offensive line is on par with the best in the SEC. If it's on par with the best in the SEC, it's on par with the best in the entire country. And we all know that LSU has a really good line. That's where Lance Hurd came from. He wasn't starting there, but he was a true freshman last season. That should tell you a lot about how deep they are. He's going to come over and potentially be our best offensive lineman, maybe. Looks really good, but he will touch on Lance Hurd here in just a minute. And he's also saying, hey, we could be up there with a team like Georgia. It's all about front 7 play. The ceiling for this team, because of the fronts on both sides, which you'll also hear Cole say, is going to be tremendous. We're going to let him finish.
There's no other way that we can spin that. There's no other way that we can talk about that. They got to stay healthy. They got to protect the quarterback. They don't have the reserves to come in and be close to what they were. There are a few spots where they may be able to survive. But for the most part, they're going to have to stay healthy. John Campbell Jr. is going to be, he's in the running for best tackle in the league returning next year. He's in the conversation no matter what. Lance Hurd, the LSU transfer. I think big physical, technically, he still has a little room to grow. I do think with some of the technical flaws I saw with him at LSU, because of how this system operates, could help him a little bit more here. The thing that I think Tennessee fans should be excited about with him is the movement that you are able to get with Darnell Wright at times. I think Lance Heard's going to be capable of helping you with that. And you know Campbell is. I mean, he'll put the Virginia film on from last year. He's got the guy going up the tunnel. But I think Lance Heard could add a little bit more of that. Now, athletically in pass protection, I do still think he's got some work to do. But, hey, you've got those groups of tight ends, some good backs, and a mobile quarterback that can help offset some of that. So that's okay. This offense can find ways to work around that. But it's that movement. When that starts to hum, that's when this offense goes to the next level. When you get tight ends that can be mismatches, be it physically or from a speed or athleticism perspective, that's when this offense takes the next step, and you start seeing those backs that are home run hitters have more opportunities to do that. Or receivers that can hurt you down the field with one-on-ones, they get more opportunities to do that because you've got to pick. I mean, I've had conversations with D coordinators in this league, and they talk about that frustration pulling their hair out of, is my alley defenders going to be out there on the numbers, or am I going to keep him down inside the hash and try to play the run? I have to make that call. And then if he's down inside playing the run, it's not just the quick out or some sort of screen out here. There are a lot of different route combinations that can hurt you before he gets to that safety. They're going to be a problem. Or down the field on the outside, they're going to be an issue. And if you're working that safety this way, we're probably going up that way.
All right, so we're going to stop it right there because he said a whole lot. But whenever he's talking about Lance Heard saying, hey, he can move bodies, that's important on the offensive line. And it's not necessarily something that we do a lot of in our scheme. Our scheme is not really asking for us to be, maulers and necessarily really move people. It's more of walling people off, which is why this is more of an offensive line friendly system. And also, just because we spread you out so much, it should make a lot of the blocking situations a lot easier, especially because we always have a tight end, I would say probably 80% of the time in there to help us block, if not a tight end and also a running back in there. So we should be fine there. I think that, Lance Heard is a big upgrade from a guy like Gerald Mincey. And, I think that the offensive line in general is just going to take a gigantic leap forward. Now, as he's also just talking about the way that our scheme spreads you out and it makes you kind of decide what you want to do as a D coordinator. Hey, am I going to try to stop the run or am I going to dedicate some more bodies to try to stop the pass? How do you defend this offense? Well, we see, Georgia had great success with it, but the way that Georgia did it was with having some big maulers in the middle of their defensive line that could get to our quarterback quickly. Outside of that, they're not doing nothing special. They're just pretty much manning up. They were just able to get to us before we could get those passes off. Now that the offensive line is, what he's calling a top tier group in the SEC, we should expect that we can make those throws down the field. And oh, by the way, Nico's a very mobile guy. So if that pressure does come out the middle, he can create, extend, all that type of stuff. And we should be in a really good position. This is why I keep on telling y'all, this is why P keeps on telling y'all, this is a championship caliber team, but we'll let him go on to the next point.
It becomes a massive headache. Put the tempo on top of that, also going to be a problem. Spraggins been around forever. You guys know one of my favorite players in this league. He's got to cut down on the penalties. That would be my main thing with him. He's a fun player to watch. He's a guy that has absolutely exceeded his athletic ability, which I think is great. Anybody who makes more of what they got, I'm a fan. I love it. Spraggins has done that. Cooper Mays will be at center. Missed most of spring. Doesn't really need the work. I mean, you want him to get the work, but he'll be one of the better centers returning in the SEC. He's battle tested. He's game ready. He knows it. And there is a massive mental drop off wherever they go next. There just is. This kid can direct traffic. He can get people in the right places. He can call them out. Not only ID the mic, he can ID other things. They need him. They have to have him. If this is a 10 or more win team, if this is a playoff team, Cooper Mays is healthy most of this year. He just is. I mean, that's one that can't go.
So, Cole being a former center, he understands the importance of that position. And we all know that Cooper Mays might be, he's definitely one of the most important people on this team. So him staying healthy is going to be critical for us. Now, notice that he also said that there's going to be a huge mental drop-off between Cooper Mays and whoever the next player is, which is probably going to be Vice and Lane. And I would have to agree with that. But I do think that Vice and Lane can hold up from a physical perspective. Maybe not, on some crazy level, but it's not going to be that big of a drop-off from a physical perspective. I liked what I saw from him up against our great, D line in that orange and white game. He's going to have more time to get the mental stuff down. It is going to come with some more reps, but over the summer, he's going to get plenty of them. So I think that we're okay at that position. I'm not going to say that if Cooper Mays goes down and we're still going to necessarily be a championship caliber team. But I think that we could find a way to maybe make it into the playoffs, especially because there's so many other veterans around Vice and Lane. But knock on wood, hopefully none of that happens.
The other guard spot I think is going to be interesting to watch. Andre Carrick, I think, will have a shot. I think Dane Davis will have a shot. I think Jackson Lampley will have a shot. I think if you're just picking personality, it's probably Dane Davis. And I think he worked at guard. Actually, I know he worked at guard a little bit more during the spring to potentially prepare him to be that guy. I think that one spot's a little uncertain. They'll battle it out through fall, use summer. But the good news is you do have a couple of numbers there that could help. So that's not going to be as big of an issue. The one that I noticed in the spring game was Big 77.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to wait before we get to Larry Johnson, but he's talking about the left guard position. So he does not mention Shamrod Umarov. Again, he's not in this program, right? He does not follow Tennessee as closely as we do. He's got to follow a lot of other teams. But just for him to have this much information and knowledge of our team is very, very impressive. But I would say that Sham probably has the best opportunity to start based off of what I saw in the orange and white game. And it's interesting that Cole did not bring him up. Maybe there's something there that I'm missing. But Dane Davis, I don't think that he looked great at right guard. Honestly speaking, he looked okay. He's a guy that if we had to put him in a bind, he could kind of hold his own. But that's not his natural position. I think he even spoke about it. It's hard for him to kind of bend. So he would rather play tackle. Probably going to be more of our swing tackle guy, and he's about to start talking about Larry Johnson, maybe fitting into that role as well. But I don't see Andre Carrick winning that left guard position either. A lot of people keep talking about him. I just don't see that. I would probably take Jackson Lampley over Andre Carrick, but we'll see what happens once Andre does come back. Has he progressed from the end of last season to whatever point we're going to be at that he does come back? It's going to be really big. But yeah, that is still an open position. But I would say that Sham looked good enough. And if whoever ends up starting over him ends up being better than him, then we're in a great position, y'all, with that left guard.
Larry Johnson, the third. I don't know if he's akin to Grandmama, but I thought he did some really nice things in the spring game. And my understanding is that he took the biggest step in the spring of all the offensive linemen, one of the biggest steps of any player on this team. He got a ton of reps. So even when you're rotating and moving guys around, if you're a one and there's not a lot of guys behind you at the second right tackle, or there's not a second left tackle, you're getting all those reps. So he got a lot of reps with the ones and the twos. He grew a lot. They need him as a backup this year. Maybe he's the swing tackle. I don't know exactly how it could play out, but I think you'll need him to at least back up one spot. That's where he would be super valuable, and you want him to be ready for that. You want him to be able to handle that. So the offensive line has a chance to be really good, has a chance to be a strength of the football team. It's just got to stay healthy. It has to. One other kid that I thought did some good things, Gage Ginther, 78. I liked him in the spring game. He just showed a lot of fight, showed some grit. Looked like he was getting after it. Young pup, but I like seeing the young kids get out there and just letting it rip. Even if you're busting an assignment or if somebody gets the better of you with their hands, like you're just finishing it and you're fighting your rear end off trying to make things happen. So props to him for being out there and being able to get some things going.
All right, so number one with Larry Johnson, hearing that he had the most progress on the offensive line this, over the spring, that's encouraging to hear because I had not heard. That's my first time hearing that. But he does have access to, coaches and all that type of stuff. So if he's saying it, it's because he heard it from somebody that we can trust. That's a really big deal because there was a question mark. Who's going to be the other backup tackle besides Dane Davis? Hearing that Larry Johnson could possibly work into that role is going to be huge for us, especially as we're looking forward to 2025, because now we're talking about Lance Hurd and then maybe Larry Johnson and, whatever star or stud that we end up bringing in, with this upcoming class. He also touches on Gage Ginther, who I think looked pretty good. To me, it looks like he just needs to get stronger. Same thing with all the offensive linemen. But, that freshman class of offensive linemen that we have so far up on campus, they are the most impressive freshman group that we've had since Coach Heupel has been at Tennessee. But let's let Cole finish.
Wide receiver position we know is usually going to be a strength. Brew McCoy will be back. We know what he's all about. Was having a hell of a year before the injury and should be back close to being what he was a year ago. Chaz Nimrod got a touchdown catch in the game. I think he's had more reps to be able to develop. I think he will really help this football team. That doesn't mean he's dynamic or 80 catch guy, but I just think because of the movement in some other places, he'll be able to help this football team out. Dante Thornton, saw him in the game a little bit. We've all heard the stories, like we've heard the folk tales, but We need to see it consistently. He was banged up last year. Wasn't healthy a whole lot, but he can be big time. I think he'll play outside a little bit more and probably have a few more opportunities. There's a guy on this team, though, that we've told you about because we watched the film, and when he transferred in, we tried to explain to people that Chris Brazell is going to be the real deal. And, I mean, my understanding is the way that he finds space is uncanny. Maybe doesn't even know he's doing it sometimes. 50-50 balls, athleticism, he's real deal. He's going to be big time. And you saw some of him in the spring game do some of those things. I think he's going to have a hell of a year. Also, Malik Matthews, who I'm also told is like physically just kind of a freak show kid. He's out there throwing blocks on screens. He catches a touchdown pass. Or Mike Matthews. Maybe he helps out a little bit. And a guy that in this system, in this scheme, multiple receivers are going to get a chance. He could be another one. Squirrel White, exciting slot player, going to be back. He does different things with the quick game. So receivers should be deep, deeper than it's been. You have different body types. You have different skill sets. Just super valuable for Nico to be able to have this group to throw to. And if the offensive line stays healthy and quarterback continues to grow and plays within the scheme and the system, this group's got a chance to be really good.
Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. He's saying a whole lot of great things about our wide receiver core, things that we already knew, but he does not touch on everybody. There's still a whole lot of depth. He didn't talk about Braylon Staley because Braylon Staley was not in the orange and white game, so how could he really know, what he's going to be doing in college? But we've seen it. He looks really good throughout all of spring, and he's a guy that can back up Squirrel, be, maybe a little bit of a drop-off just because he doesn't know the plays as much, but from an athletic perspective and from a probably production perspective, making tough catches, I trust in him to do that. And Chris Brazell, like we've been telling y'all for the longest time, he's a stud. There really is no question. He's coming from a smaller school, yes, but just cut on the film. I mean, he's huge. He's got some very long arms, and he's extremely twitchy as well, and then he's a dog. So all those things just make for a player that should be extremely, extremely productive in this system. Also love the way that he's blocked outside. I mean, our wide receiver room should be loaded, especially if Dante Thornton comes along the way that we feel like he will, the way that we heard from the coaches and from the insiders that he has. So that's another very deep room, and we should be expecting a lot from our wide receivers, and hopefully we can get back to wide receiver U.
I personally think, just because I don't know enough about the next guys, I think they need Dylan Sampson to be able to go for most of the year and probably go a lot, just because I think he's a little bit different. And somebody else could emerge, possibly. We'll see. But some have already been dinged up, so it's hard to just bank on that and rely on that. All right, defense.
Okay, so that's what he kind of touched on earlier in this video with the running backs. Yeah, Dylan Sampson is going to be a really good player, but he just doesn't understand that Cam Selden is also going to be very special. And we've seen that so far with him. Everything that he's done, obviously, since he's been healthy or when he's healthy, has been very, very impressive. So, yeah, he's saying that if they can if we can find another good player inside of that room, then he feels like we should have something pretty special here.
Defensively, I think the strength of the football team is going to be this defensive line. We've seen so many of these guys play so much football and get better and play at a high level. And there's just not a lot of Rodney Gardner coached defensive linemen that are turds or don't play hard. Like, they're not. Amari Thomas was that at one point in his career. He's not anymore. I mean, hell, you saw 21 down, 15 yards downfield making a play.
Yeah, that's something that we had actually pointed out in the members only film breakdown, but that was very impressive. Big O, who was over 300 pounds, like 6'2", 6'3", 300-something pounds, moving down the field like that, making tackles 10, 15 yards down the field. Extremely impressive, and that is very, very telling of what Rodney Gardner gets out of his players inside of that room.
He's going to be big time. Byron Easton's played a lot of football. Omar Norman Lott apparently had a really nice spring, a guy that made some strides, did some good things. And Elijah Simmons, this could potentially be a breakout year for him. I mean, he's a dude that's like 6'2", almost 6'3", but he looks like one of those short, squatty D tackles because he's just so freaking wide. I mean, he's just built like a brick house and gives you a different body type, a different physical type specimen inside that you can rotate in and out. That's tough inside, man. Like, that's better numbers, better players than a lot of other teams have. It's Tyree West, Dominic Bailey at end.
All right, so now he's moving on to the ends, but just the inside presence on our defensive line, as P and I have been telling y'all, it's one of the best in the entire country, and I think everyone's kind of been touching on that. But yeah, we're very, very deep. We got some dogs. And we got 4 guys that could go out and be a starter at any school in the entire country, and that's for real, for real. So we should feel very, very blessed and fortunate to know that the interior of our defense is going to be tremendous. He talks a lot about Big E, but he doesn't talk a whole lot about Bryson Easton, who we have heard is probably, could maybe be the best defensive tackle on this entire team coming into this season. So that just tells you how deep we are. Very impressed so far. Let's hear what he has to say about the ends.
He should be fine. I liked a little bit of what Jason Jenkins did in the spring game. I know it was probably against freshmen in 2s and 3s, but he was active. So could he be a late rotational guy that maybe grabs a couple snaps and helps? Possibly. I'm not saying he's going to be a game changer. And then you got James Pierce over off the edge. What I'm told is.
All right, so we're going to get to James Pierce, but I just want to touch on the strong side at defensive ends because he brings up several players, but he does not mention Tyree Weathersby. Tyree Weathersby, we believe, is going to end up being the starter. So as as impressed as he was with the other guys, he didn't even get to see Tyree go because he did not participate in the orange and white game. So just, more riches for our defensive line.
The power inside of his game is much better and far past what anybody really believes or thinks. That he can get that speed to power going and be a real problem. We've seen the speed, the bend, the flexibility, the athleticism. He is that guy off the edge, big time. And you've seen the draft projections, top 5, top 10 pick. He's got it in him. And it's just consistency now. And it's that defense being able to have him in positions on a regular basis to be able to attack the quarterback. Some of that has to do with the score of the game, what the offense is doing. I mean, all that plays into that. Obviously, Joshua Josephs off the edge has played a lot. I mean, he's a guy that's helped him. He's a guy that has gotten significant snaps. So I think he's somebody that helps you there as well. But, I mean, Pierce is the one that's going to get the attention. So who else does that free up and get more opportunities? We'll see. And Tim Smith likes to go with jet packages. So you'll have some lighter looks where different guys will be lined up in different places. He's going to bring pressure, which is why I think that Keenan Peele.
Okay, so he's about to move on to the linebackers, but he's talking about Coach Banks. He said Tim Smith, but he meant Tim Banks. So Tim Banks, who is our defensive coordinator, does like to bring pressure. And he mentioned a lot of players out there at the Leo position, or he mentioned a couple, but we've got so many more. I mean, Jordan Ross is going to be another one. Caleb Herring, who we know has been coming along. We still have Shandavian Bradley, who I thought was impressive in the orange and white game as well. And then we've also got Emmanuel Okoye, who's kind of like the secret weapon that no one really knows about, but just seeing what he did in the film breakdowns that we've done so far, it's like, man, I mean, his upside is absolutely tremendous. So pass rush and all that type of stuff is going to be absolutely excellent for this team. That's, at least that's what we are anticipating. Hopefully we don't have any injuries so that we can keep on rotating guys in more and more and more. We also didn't talk about Jackson Moy as far as a, defensive tackle body, but that's another one. We are just filthy loaded at that position. So let's let him finish and talk about the linebackers.
He is one of those players that can't get dinged up. He just can't. He can't be a guy that.
All right, so just for those of y'all that missed it, he is talking about Keenan Pili right now at the linebacker position.
And this is that much of the season again. And he's too valuable from a leadership perspective, active. I know that this staff wants to get better east-west at the linebacker position. And you bring in linebacker coach from Washington, who I've had a chance to be around. I have great admiration for, great dude. Players love playing for him. But the downhill thumper days, I think, are, for most of football, is really gone. But specifically, this group wanted to be able to cover more east and west. Peely obviously gives you that. Aaron Carter gives you that. He's got experience. He'll be there off the ball. Jeremiah Talander is somebody who played a lot last year. I think you could be looking at him as having a fairly significant role. You saw him flying downhill in the spring game a little bit, making some plays. Carter was out during most of spring, so you didn't get to see a lot of him, but we know what he can do. He's played. And then Caleb Riley, I think, has big-time ability, or Caleb Perry, excuse me, somebody that I think this coaching staff believes in, wants to take that next step, athletically can take that next step, but it's just that light switch has got to come on consistently. He's got upside. He'll probably be a sub-package guy more than anything else this year, but he's going to help that defense. Freshman Edwin Spillman, I thought was flying around a little bit in the actual spring game. Don't know how much he can help right now, but I loved, there was a couple plays where he took a bad angle initially and then was able to get back and help on the tackle. So that change of direction really stuck out to me in the spring game from what I saw. Boo Carter, I think, is probably.
All right, so everything that he said about the linebackers, we've kind of echoed all those same sentiments. It's very interesting to me that he talks about Caleb Perry being a guy that's more of a sub-package player. That's what we've been saying. Some people have been speculating on Will he be a starter? We don't think so. It's interesting that Cole feels the exact same way as more of an outsider, just watching our guys play and go to work, and probably also just from what he's heard from people closer to the program. So I think that that's interesting. But I'm also very curious as to why people keep on talking about Edwin Spillman not seeing the field as much, because everyone has really good things to say about him. Now, Cole does say that he took some bad angles. That it typically happens when you are, maybe don't identify what's happening quick enough. So we've talked so much with Edwin Spillman about just having to learn what to do on the college level, and that's going to come with time. But we are expecting that over the summer and throughout fall camp, he's going to get that picked up and figured out well enough that he can get thrown into the game, especially if we really need him. But I'm hoping that the staff wants to get him rotated in early and often against, some of these UT Chattanoogas, teams like that we're going to be blowing out, hopefully, and give him some early, live game playing experience. It's going to be critical for him. It's going to be critical for this team because we will need that depth moving forward. So we'll let him talk about Boo Carter.
We're going to run Star. Saw him behind the line of scrimmage a couple of times in the spring game. Like, he's quick, man. Like, he can get to full speed in a hurry. And at that position, whether you're close to the line of scrimmage, off the ball, he's very smart, instinct, speed. He and Jordan Thomas will share that spot. Jacoby Thomas, the Middle Tennessee safety transfer, is probably going to be at one of the safety spots. I think speed of the game a little bit much for him still right now. Going to have to get more acclimated to that. But they believe in his ability. I think he's somebody at safety that is a regular player. Probably a little bit of Andre Turrentine and some Will Brooks will be your other safeties in the secondary. I'm not going to tell you that I'm super confident in the secondary. I think it has a chance to be better because a lot of the younger guys played last year, so they have more confidence, and then you bring some leaders in through the portal. At corner, you go get Jamam.
All right, so as he's saying that he doesn't have a whole lot of necessarily confidence in our secondary, but he also said that it's probably going to be Kobe Thomas at one of the safeties, which I do agree with that. He did talk about maybe he needs to get used to the speed of the game. I didn't see that. What I saw in the game is he was letting up so that he wasn't hurting his teammates, but he was identifying plays very quickly. He makes a whole lot of tackles, a whole lot of plays that we did break down in the film sessions. But we also heard him say that Will Brooks could potentially be one of the starters at safety. Now, I have heard some of the insiders say this as well, but just to completely ignore John Slaughter is a little bit mind-boggling to me. I don't see that happening. I think that John Slaughter still has a great shot to be a starter. And, if you look at it more that way, then all of a sudden you have a lot more confidence in this secondary, especially for the safeties.
McCoy from Oregon State. You've got the kid from Temple, Jalen McMurray. So you got some vets out there out wide that can help you with some things that you struggled with a season ago. Caleb Beasley, the freshman, I think has a chance to help some. Don't know exactly how much, but it's a little bit more of a mixed bag because I think Ricky Gibson at corner. Apparently, Ricky Gibson played his best football this past spring. And so if that continues to go, he's someone that can help you out a lot as well and that you're going to be able to lean on. The numbers are just flat better in the secondary. You have more veterans, which is good. You've added to that in the portal. You needed that. You wanted that. I just don't know if that position group has the ceiling that some of these others do. Defensive line, edge, big ceiling. Quarterback, big ceiling. Receiver room, big ceiling. I think the tight end has a pretty big ceiling. I think the starting five on the offensive line have a pretty big ceiling. Outside of that, that's where that depth comes in, and that's where the depth concerns me a little bit.
All right, so that's going to be it for Cole's thoughts, and I, feel like he did a really good job, especially being an analyst for the SEC, having to cover all these teams. Very impressive the type of work that they put in to be able to speak to all of these teams like this. But I will say this, as he's, kind of wrapping things up and he's talking about our cornerbacks. Yeah, he touched on maybe all of them, most of them anyway. Talks about Caleb Beasley, who we like a lot, but he is banged up at this point. I think that Marcus Gorey is a player that could also step up as a true freshman inside of that room as a cornerback. Several other players that, like Christian Harrison, Christian Charles, that can kind of move around to some different spots, especially a cornerback. So it's not as, or you know what, I'll say it this way. There's more depth than what it may seem to more of an outsider. But I think that we're going to be fine there. I think that especially the ceiling in that room is going to be really, really high. We should be able to shut down man-to-man at every single position with our starters, and we should be able to identify plays quickly, come up and make tackles. Everyone inside that room or inside of all those rooms inside of the secondary are very, very physical. Now, this is as far as his thoughts with the team overall. We said, hey, there's a lot of position groups with some high ceilings. And then, there's some that he is not quite sure about yet. But I think that we kind of addressed that throughout this entire video. So y'all let me know y'all's thoughts down in the comment section. That's it for this one. Thank you for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and all the volunteer fans. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.